Hey everyone, Mr. Silbaugh here, and this is my take on Unit 10, Lesson 4. So in this lesson, we'll be talking about two different topics that are covered in the chapter. Both of these are rather small, so I figured it best to combine them, and they kind of both have some things they're kind of both related. We're basically talking about money today, and that's a rather exciting topic. The first one is talking about the secure exchange of money, and then the second one is talking about global considerations. Um, but so in the first part, we're going to talk about security for e-commerce payment. Um, Whenever you go online and buy something, whether you are part of a company buying stuff from another company, or you yourself are buying something from a company, you need to make sure that your payment exchange is secure. So there are three ways that payments are exchanged online. The first one is one of the ones that you might be more familiar with or might have seen possibly, especially if you've ordered things online. The first one's called an electronic funds transfer. This one's the one I was most familiar with because when I look at my statements for my bank, I do see this whenever I pay for something online. This is an EFT, an electronic funds transfer. This is the ability to transfer funds using computers or mobile devices rather than paper. Essentially, on this, you are transferring money from one person or one business to another person or another business. And banks use it to save time and to ensure that exchanging funds is secure. Essentially, what this is doing is the one bank is exchanging the funds to the other person's bank. So the person who is buying the product, their bank, whenever they put in their information, is electronically transferring the money from the buyer's bank to the seller's bank. And it's done completely electronically, and it's much, much more secure. Um, the next is called a payment gateway. This is a system that works between the merchant, the person who's selling, and the acquirer. Once the merchant receives the payment, the merchant uses the payment gateway to transmit the credit card information to the bank. So EFT is from bank to bank. Payment gateway is once the merchant receives the payment, they're going to transmit that credit card information to the bank. This is why it's important, and you may think, well, um, if a merchant has my credit card information, can't they just use that to get my credit card? And this is not necessarily the case. This is how it works, is once the merchant receives the payment information, they are able to transmit that credit card information to the bank, and the bank will process that. The bank is the one that ends up getting that information, whereas the merchant has no access to the credit card information, and it makes it more secure. The other payment technology is 3D Secure. This is an XML protocol used by credit card companies, and it's used to add security. This one isn't talked about as much in the text, so I didn't cover that in depth here. The next part is secure sockets layer and transport layer security, SSL and TLS. You may have actually seen some of these before if you've ever done some digging on your computer. Um, these are not actually transaction methods. Instead, they're tools that are used to secure transactions. So SSL, this is a protocol that provides authentication and encryption used by servers for secure exchanges, and it's now depreciated, meaning it's not used as much and it's not recommended you use. TLS is a protocol based on SSL3, and it provides authentication and encryption used by most servers for secure exchanges over the internet. This is the most recent version, and this is the preferred version. Um, the thing is, you do not need to know how these both work, you just need to know what they do. And essentially, they provide encryption and authentication. Authentication means that they recognize who is sending the information and who's receiving the information, and they encrypt it, meaning it can't be deciphered easily. That's all you need to know about these two methods and what they do. Um, you don't need to understand it and break it down. You just need to know that they both provide authentication and encryption. SSL is no longer recommended, and TLS is the preferred method. TLS is similar, but is an open standard and is updated very frequently. As I said, SSL is depreciated and no longer recommended. They're both protocols that are included in transaction methods to secure transactions. That's another thing you need to recognize is they're both used to help in transactions. They are secure through encryption, and that provides authentication, recognizing who is who, data confidentiality, making sure that the data remains confidential and it's not being shared or it's not being revealed easily, and data integrity. Data integrity in this case means that it's the information, like credit card information, is intact. It's not being depleted or like completely messed up. It's solid, okay? Many more encryption methods exist, but this is the most universally used. Again, as I said on the previous slide, you don't need to know the ins and outs of these two methods. You just need to know that they provide encryption and security. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is the SSL and TLS and how they relate to something called public key infrastructure, um, also known as PKI. What this essentially is saying is that whenever you begin an SSL session, you need to have authentication that you can begin it, okay? This is important because if you may have thought, well, when I'm transferring my information, how do I know that I'm transferring my credit card information and it's secure and it's safe and I'm not just transferring it to someone, some Joe Schmo off the street? This is important because of the fact that whenever you buy in for things online, you want to make sure that your transaction's safe and that other people aren't getting your money. So I thought about this too, is how is this done? Like, how do you know? Because someone could set up a very, very clever hacker, and this is still the case, but not as easily, could make it so that they set up a fake website and they get your money because you think it's the real website. However, one of the ways that you can prevent that is looking for the public key infrastructure, or the PKI. This is a group of individuals, networks, and computers that have the ability to confirm the identity of a person, host, or organization. PKI makes it possible for two groups who don't know each other to trust each other because they are valid groups and they are confirmed. Once trust is met, the encryption starts. This is very important. Um, PKI has two things. It has a digital certificate and a certificate authority. This is how the secure transactions work, because they need to have a digital certificate on file, and they need to have that digital certificate from an authority that says, hey, this is a valid group or person, and yes, you can trust them. So this digital certificate is a public key, and it verifies a set of credentials with the public key of the certificate of authority. It is required that all SSL and TLS sessions have a certificate on file. So both parties have to have a certificate on file in order for them to be trusted. And this is extremely important to make sure that your information is staying secure. Uh, Based upon that digital certificate, someone has to issue it, and there's a certificate authority. This is a trusted third party that verifies the identity of the person or company that submitted a request, and it issues digital certificates to help ensure the identity of the person, host, or the process. The way that you can check too, because I always wondered about this and what a digital certificate was. If you go into like Google Chrome and at the top left next to your address bar, it might say secured or not secured. And if you click on it, it will show a little digital certificate. This is actually what it's talking about, is that your transaction on that website, whether you buy something or not, is secure and no one can get your information, okay? It's important that if you do, since you're in this class now, that when you start doing more shopping online, you look for that trusted certificate. If you have that there, you can trust that your information is more likely to be secured. So be on the lookout for this, because now that I've taught this, I'm going to be looking more for this myself. It's really interesting because I always wondered what that was, and now that I've done my research and reading, I now know what it's used for and found out that's extremely important to make sure that your transactions are staying secure and safe online. If you are curious about these sessions, the TLS or the SSL, you can try out Lab 10.2, and that will give you some information about it and allow you to investigate a little bit further. But I'm not requiring you to do it. All right, the second half of this lesson talks about working in a global environment. When you work in e-commerce, you need to be concerned and educate yourself on several global issues. When you own a web business, you essentially are opening yourself to anyone who has internet access and they can access your page. You need to consider how you're going to accommodate customers from other countries. You have a couple of options. Option one, you can accommodate them, or option two, you can say, oops, we don't ship outside of the United States. It's your choice. However, you have to keep in mind if you restrict people from shopping from other countries, you lose a potential audience. So you do need to keep that in mind. All right, if you do take your business online and you decide to sell in other countries, there's a couple of things you need to be concerned about and aware of. First is, and probably one of the most obvious, is currency differences. Here in the United States, we have the United States dollar, but in other countries, they have other forms of currency. So you must be able to calculate the difference between those currencies. There's a lot of tools and resources out there that will do it for you, especially like if you use your shipping partners, they can calculate the shipping differences and shipping costs for you, but you have to have something built into your website as well that will do a conversion and put it from one currency to another. You also need to calculate any taxes and any tariffs on goods. Um, Tariffs are especially important because you want to make sure those are covered. And then you have to make a decision. Taxes you can pass off to the consumer, but do you want to put tariffs? Do you want to cover the cost of the tariffs, or do you want them to cover the cost of tariffs? And that's something to keep in mind because you might, you know, significantly increase the cost of your product just because of the taxes and tariffs and shipping that may be attached onto it. So you have to take that into consideration as well. As mentioned, while I was talking about currency differences, is the issue of international shipping. Um, International shipping is rather costly because it's going a long distance. You also have to keep in mind that some items can be searched by customs, either those leaving our country or those being delivered to another country. Customs may search for packages. This can incur costs from customs, especially if they do have to do deeper searches into it. Your item may be delayed because of customs, and if it's time sensitive, that's not necessarily a good thing. And any tariffs, your package won't be delivered or your item won't be delivered if the tariffs aren't covered on it. And that's important as well. There's a lot of things with shipping that are involved. Not to mention, one product you sell freely in one country may be heavily regulated or illegal in another country. You can potentially open yourself up to some trouble if you sell something that's illegal or something that contains something that's illegal in one country or another. Um, Other issues in global e-commerce, there's the issue of language concern. Make sure that you keep in mind the language of your audience in other countries, and if they use any types of symbols. Like this is more talking about currency symbols, but you also want to keep in mind symbols used by other countries and other languages. You want to make sure you use a Unicode. This is a character set that includes symbols for other languages. Most computers will have this. Just keep in mind if you do go this route that you have access to that character set that has symbols for that specific language. The other thing that you need to keep in mind is your relationship management. Whenever you are selling overseas or in another country, you want to make sure that you build self-trust, or you want to build trust and you want to build customer self-service. Trust is that you have quality customer service, even if you are overseas, and you have frequent communication like, hey, thanks for your order. It'll be shipped on this day. And oh, your item is shipped. Here's the information. Um, that's good trust between the consumer and the seller. You also want to have good self-service. This is something that I never thought about, but nowadays it's something that's very common. You have the ability to track your orders. If you order something, you get tracking information. You're able to follow it and follow its journey. You also have the ability to customize orders, like maybe you want to delay the shipping, or maybe you want to cancel your order. Those are all important things. And you also want to be able to choose your products without any help. This means that the person can go on your website, find what they're looking for, find any necessary information, buy it without having to talk to someone. And that's important and, not something that we think about, but we do almost every time we shop online now. All right, in closing, if you do sell any items online, it's important to make sure that your transactions are secure and encrypted. You don't want to be one of those companies that has a data breach and runs into issues with that. It's a terrible way to lose public trust. And if you do decide to sell anything overseas, you want to make sure that you keep in mind what their customs are and what their um, currency issues are. There's a lot of different issues in selling goods and services in other countries that you need to make sure you're aware of if you do go that route. All right, that's going to do it for this lesson.